Hey, rookies, here we are, Wild Cards Show. We're going to lay out our predictions for each conference and maybe give some prop bets if we have time by the end of the show. Well, the NFL got exactly what they wanted. Hill returns to KC, Stafford returns to Detroit, and the Packers come to town to face off against their old ball coach, McCarthy. Who would have thunk it? We have two bye teams this week, get a weekend of deserved rest. Obviously, the Ravens for the AFC and the 49ers for the NFC. We began the season and we had one of our shows trying to predict who would not make it from last year. So let me recap the wild card teams from last year. So the NFL or the NFC, we had the Eagles, the 49ers. They're both in this year, but the Seahawks, Vikings, and Giants were who in last year are not. And the Cowboys and Bucks are still in. So four teams from the AFC and four teams from the NFC from last year. We had the Chiefs, Jags, Chargers, Bills, Dolphins, which are in. Bengals were in last year, and the Ravens. This year we had the Packers, Rams, and Lions in the NFC, and the Steelers, Browns, and Texans in the AFC. Surprisingly or not surprisingly, a 42% rate of change, which is about the average for the NFL over the past 10 years. As we discussed in week 17, we have a few teams limping into the playoffs. Obviously, the Eagles, Dolphins, Lions, and Chiefs. And then the Ravens, Bills, and Browns. Really the only teams I would characterize as on hot streaks. Maybe the Rams at 5-0, but some of their competition wasn't good. And the Steelers at 3-0, but that week 18 game is suspect given the Ravens didn't play. I feel like anyone at this point could get to the Super Bowl to represent their conference and win it all. And I really mean it this year. Jeff, any standouts here from this group or any commentary on who made the playoffs and who didn't and what it maybe looks like for next year?
Well, I was glad to see that it happened again. At least four teams are new every year in the playoffs, and typically more than five. So we got our six new teams in this year. So that was good. That's on track. I would probably limit the number of teams that I think can win. I think there are three in the AFC and two in the NFC that I'm kind of strongly lean towards. And then the others, it would take some work. But yeah, I think we've got good matchups this week.
So let's break down, Jeff, some of the top defenses remaining as well as the offenses and maybe take a look at any weaknesses. So, as far as points allowed, the top 10 defenses in the league this year, we have five playoff teams in the top five, with the Ravens at 1 at 16 a game, 49ers at 2 at 16.7 a game, Chiefs number 3 at 17.5, Bills at 4 at 18.5, and the Cowboys coming in 5 at 18.9. And then we dropped to Pittsburgh at number 9, giving up 20 a game. When we look at yards or fewest yards, we see the Browns at number 1, Ravens, Chiefs, Dolphins, Cowboys at 6, and then the 49ers coming in at 9th. Situationally, the other team's defense has also rose to the occasion, like the Bucks and the Texans and the Rams a few times. And I think they could do it during the playoffs as well if their defense decided to play well that game. So the teams that have some serious gaps at defense in general are obviously the Eagles, but specifically their passing defense at 31st in the league, and the Bucks at 29th, which makes the over in that matchup look pretty good. The Lions passing D sits at 27, giving up 247 a game, and the Texans at 23, giving up 294 yards a game. The Lions rush D, though, stands out at number 2, giving up only 88 a game. Meanwhile, the Packers rush D will have to get better than its 26 rating, giving up 128 a game to get forward. Jeff, what about the defenses stand out to you? As far as like either advantage in the first round, either good or bad. Like, what are you thinking?
So the only two defenses that stand out to me as being able to dictate a game are Baltimore and San Fran. So we won't have either of those this week. The ones that I think are going to have the biggest impact in week 1. I think you've got Kansas City, which should be able to handle Miami in the cold because they don't have to worry as much about the multidimensional, Tua to Hill. And I think Dallas playing at home against a young team could feast on some turnovers. So I'm kind of looking for them to have a good game this week.
Yeah, what do you think about that Browns defense against the rookie quarterback out of Houston on the road?
So I like Cleveland in the game mainly because of their defense. But you never. Stroud has really impressed. I don't know that it's going to necessarily be a bad performance from Houston. I think Cleveland is just going to make it tough, and they're going to be able to do enough to win that game.
All right. Well, let's take a look at the offense. And we've got plenty of great offenses in this group of 14. Total offense has the top 9 positions, then the Packers at 11, Texans at 12, Browns at 16, the Bucks at 23, and the Steelers at 25. So the question is which offenses have stagnated and which ones are hot? With Flacco under center, the Browns offense has exploded, as has the Steelers with Rudolph in comparison to the previous quarterbacks. The Bills' offense has exploded since week 13, despite only putting up 21 points in that week 18 game against the Fins. Withstanding, they've really played well. Week 18, the Steelers only put up 17 against the Ravens, but they've actually played well since they put in their new quarterback. The offensive production for the Fins and the 49ers is pretty impressive. Although the Dolphins have not played well against good defenses. So Jeff, what offenses stand out here going into the postseason, and which ones are going to be hampered as we go into that first round?
Well, Cleveland has performed a lot better under Flacco. So I'd say that's the one that might surprise people because not everyone thinks of Cleveland as being any good on offense this year, but they are the last 5 weeks of the season. So that would be big. And then, of course, Dallas playing at home where they don't have to worry about crowd noise and they're playing fast on turf. I think they'll probably stand out. I think they'll have a really good game, which might actually lead me to go towards the over in that game.
Okay. So let's kick it off Saturday. We got the game with the Browns traveling to Houston, talking about that Browns offense to take on the AFC South champion Houston Texans. The Texans needed help last week from the Titans and needed a win, which they did get on the road in Indy, a very impressive win. And if you would have picked them to win the AFC South, you'd be sitting a nice profit right now at the beginning of the season. The Browns are favored in this game by 2.5. The over-under is set at 44. Perfect weather conditions. If they decide to retract the dome for the game, that cold front doesn't look like it's going to make it to Houston. With Flacco under center, the Browns are 5-1, losing to the Rams in his first quarterback start back. And you really can't count that one against them. The Browns offense has put up 19, 31, 20, 36, and 37 in that stretch, to include a win in Houston, 36-22 in week 16. What is the stat for a team winning on the road against the same team in the season? Actually pretty good. Defensively, the Browns are arguably the best D in football, and offensively, their time of possession is also number 1, which is impressive because that helps the defense as it keeps their other team's offense off the field. The Browns rested their starters in a meaningless game in week 18. So they're coming in fairly healthy. Cooper Tillman still carry questionable status, as does Thornhill and Newsome, although it appears everyone's a go. Houston didn't add anyone to the list of the injured players in their week 18 win, but Brown and Woods will come in questionable, and their D remains healthy. My heart is with the Texan team, and if they can put pressure on Flacco early on. You still there, Jeff?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, yeah. If they can put pressure on Flacco, they may be able to get this game. But if Flacco comes out hot like he did in week 16, it's going to be an early exit, and 44 will be an easy number to hit. Give me the Browns -2.5, and I would leave the over here, Jeff. Jeff, who gets it done in Houston?
I do like Cleveland in this one. I think they can play safe. They can do defense, ball control, not take too many risks, and win this game. I think for Houston to win, they're going to have to do something special. So it leads me to think that Cleveland's going to have the easier path. I'm not saying this was one of my biggest locks, but I feel comfortable with them winning, and I would go ahead and lay the points in this one.
For the over, Jeff, lay him to the over or to the under?
I'd just give the 2.5. If I were going to go over under this one, I'm going to go over in a lot of these week 1 matchups. But yeah, this one's one I'd probably go over.
Okay. But that's not a strong, I don't sense that's a strong over for you.
It's not. No, this
and it's not for me either. It's not for me either. So, you know, if you're thinking about, I think there's better bets than taking the over in this game. Hey, next up in the matchup is of this wild card round with the Chiefs hosting the Dolphins, favored by 3.5. The over-unders at 44. Brutally cold at game time. 13 for the high, 1 for the low. No snow in the forecast, but the winds I've seen anywhere from 16 miles per hour all the way up with gusts in the 30s. The Dolphins lost the Chiefs in week 9, 21-14. The Dolphins D was able to handle Mahomes' offense, but could not get it going against the Chiefs' excellent D. The Dolphins didn't have their eccentric electric back or Chain in that game, so he could be a difference maker here. The Dolphins got a bad draw playing on Sunday, losing the AFC to the second seed. Or I'm sorry, on Saturday. Good and Van Krinkle left the game against Buffalo, and they could get Waddle back in the wild card round, but you need to check that as we get closer to game time. Kansas City's coming in healthy, sitting several players in their meaningless Week 18 game. Jeff, you know I don't like the hook, but I like Kansas City in the spot and look to fade the Dolphins here after the tough late loss on Sunday night. Feels like the game gets over here despite the cold, and that total could drop as we get close to the game time. So if you like the total, if you like the under, I would get it now. If you like the over, I would probably wait till game time. Let people feel the cold and start betting that it'll go under. Jeff, who do you like in this classic Chiefs-Dolphins matchup?
I do think the cold is going to make me lean a little heavier towards Kansas City. I would say this is a pick'em game, but the injuries on Miami's offensive line are probably going to come into play here because you're going to want to run the ball a lot in a cold, windy game. And I think that's going to be inhibited. Normally, I would say Miami has the better running game, but I think it's going to be a wash here, and a wash here in the running game. Everything else to me lends towards Kansas City. So I'm going Kansas City here minus the points.
Yeah, the one concern I have, Jeff, is the wide receivers in Kansas City have not been very consistent, and that's being nice about it.
They've been consistently bad.
Yeah, I don't know what the cold weather is going to do to their pass catching. So this may be one of those where you take the Chiefs, but then you're ready to in-game bet it the other way if you start seeing a couple drops early on and you see their quarterback and head coach get very frustrated, as he has gotten frustrated, rightly so, with the number of drops throughout the game. So I would just watch this one closely, and I think we're right on track. You didn't really talk the total, Jeff. Do you think this thing gets over, or do you think it gets under?
The weather does concern me. I agree. It's probably going to continue to drop the total as it gets closer to game time because people will think under. So I'm not leaning strongly either way on this one right now.
Okay. So you've got a slight lean to me to the over. I would wait until that number comes down because I think it'll probably come down to about the 42.5 level at some point if it hasn't already gotten there. I didn't check today. I was on the road. Hey, next up Sunday, we see the first of three matchups. The Bills host the Steelers and favored by 10. The over-under's at 35 and a hook. 23 for a high with winds up to 21 miles an hour is what I saw in the forecast. The Steelers have lost 4 of their last 7 by more than 10 points. Or I'm sorry, of their 7 losses, 4 were more than 10 points. So given this matchup, negative 10 is not out of the question. So the question is Mason Rudolph for real, and can he keep this one close? He played well against the Bengals and Seahawks and really kept the Steelers in the hunt, picking up the last playoff spot. The Bills look like they lost some players in that tough win against the Dolphins on the road. Johnson was in concussion protocol. Gabe Davis injury did not look good on his knee. Not sure what that is, but it didn't look good. Dawkins, Dobson, Douglas did not return in the matchup. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh is coming in banged up. So I guess Watt's not playing. He got hurt in that game. The Bills are 3-1 in the series since 2019, when the last matchup easily 38-3 last year. The weather's going to be cold, and the Bills are coming in too hot for the Steelers team, despite the additional day of rest from the Bills' late night Sunday game. I like the Bills to win, but nothing else is attractive here. Maybe the over. Jeff, can Rudolph keep the Steelers close here?
I don't think so. I think, well, he did a good job and kind of helped save their season. When you get against a good defense and a playoff atmosphere, he is not talented enough to overcome a Buffalo team that's just better than Pittsburgh. So I think they win the game. I think he starts pushing and pressing and probably has some turnovers late. So I do think Buffalo covers this point spread. And I'm probably leaning over it despite the weather.
Yeah, 35 and a hook's not a lot, and the Steelers have been able to score with Mason Rudolph under center. So
and no Watt
yeah, you're right.
for the defense. So
yeah, you're right. I think that's probably, I think that's about the right call there, Jeff. I think the Bills cover and they get over. Next up, we have the Packers traveling to Dallas, take on the boys. The Cowboys are favored by 7.5. The over-under's at 50 and a hook. That's pretty high for a playoff game. Cowboys are 8-0 at home, but but the last game against Detroit, they scored 30-plus points in 7 of those games, with 5 of those games at home going over 40. Just an amazing home record, really. Also 6-2 at home. The Cowboys were this season. The Packers 4-4 on the road this year, beating Carolina, Vikings, Detroit, and Chicago, and the Cowboys are better than all of those teams. The Packers have had injury issues all year, specifically on D, but they come into this game with their 2 wide receivers is questionable, Watson and Dobbs. They'll go. The Cowboys have Martin and Smith questionable, as well as Gilmore. Fortunately, the MRI came back positive, but I'm not sure that he'll be able to play this game at all. So I would watch that. I don't think it's going to matter. Another great story is the Pack returned to another great NFL story is the Pack returned to face their former coach, and lots of drama, which the NFL front office just absolutely loves. It feels like this should get over 10 spread here. So it feels like Green Bay might actually cover, it feels like 10, but that tells me that because of 7.5 that they're trying to entice people. So maybe they actually cover under a touchdown. Dak is 2-4 in the playoffs and 1-2 at home in Dallas. In those games, the Cowboys are 5-1 to the over in those playoff games. I like the over here, and I feel like the Cowboys would win, but I'm not so sure about the cover. Jeff, does Jordan Love get the first playoff win as a starter?
I certainly don't see it. I think Dak, Dak and CD have a good thing going right now. So I don't think Green Bay can stop them. The Green Bay, at least the last 5 weeks, their secondary has been vulnerable. So unless they get a lot of pressure on Dak, I think we easily can expect Dallas to go over 30. I'm looking at 31, 35 points for Dallas. So then it just depends on the over on whether you think Green Bay can get close to 20. I think they're going to get around 21. So I think Dallas wins. I think they cover, and I think it goes over.
All right, I definitely like the over, and I like the Cowboys. I'm going to stay away from the line. If you force me to pick a bet, I would probably take the Cowboys and hope that they got over the total. The final Sunday night game is the Golf Stafford playoff rematch for the decade. The Lions are favored by 3.5, and the over-under is set at 51 and a hook. At the beginning of 2021, the Rams shipped Jared Goff in 3 picks, a third rounder in 21, a first rounder in 22, and another first rounder in 23. The Rams got Stafford in the Super Bowl in the deal, so it's very clear that they are the greater beneficiary so far with that Super Bowl win. So that's what's intriguing about this story. Both of these quarterbacks are very similar quarterbacks, play action specialists that need a good run offense, and both of these teams can run the rock pretty well. Interesting, the Lions games, 9 Lions games have gone over 50 and 9 for the Rams. So it's kind of 50-50. This thing gets over the total. But this feels like it's going to get over 50 by the third quarter. I expect this thing to be a high-flying shootout. I don't like the hook, but feel like the Lions win this one late. Because I think the Lions-Dallas divisional rematch is really what the NFL would like to see. Jeff, do we see Dallas Lions rematch, or do the Rams go on to play the 49ers?
So this game is the toughest for me to pick. Although if you look over under, I'm definitely going over. Once Cooper Kupp got back and joined Puka Nacua, Stafford has been a top 8 quarterback the rest of the season with those 2 receivers in the lineup. It's been a rejuvenated year for him once he got his receivers healthy. So they've really been playing well. So I think they will score on Detroit, and we know Detroit's just been a high-flying offense all year. So I think this thing goes over. I think it comes right down to the wire, and I'm going to say Detroit closely, but it's really hard to pick this one.
Yeah, as far as Kupp coming back, you realize that Williams also came back from injury about the same time that Kupp was getting back, and McVay loves the play action pass, and Stafford's a perfect play action quarterback. He was good in high school, running the play action for what was
Highland Park.
Highland Park,
yeah. Yep.
Highland Park. And he ran that same offense in Georgia and ran in Detroit and runs it extremely well in Los Angeles. So I think this one's just going to come down to which defense can come up and make a stop. And the reason why I'm liking the Lions is, number one, they're at home, and number two, Hutchinson has just been playing lights out the last 4 or 5 games. So if he brings that kind of motor, he could get some pressure on Stafford and, maybe force a turnover late and secure this win. But I think this is going to be the best game of the wild card round. Monday night, the Eagles go on the road to face off against the Bucs. The Bucs got in Week 18 with a 9-0 win over the Panthers. The Bucs are home dogs here in a wild card round, plus 2.5. The over/under is 43 and a hook. The Eagles are coming in the weakest D in the playoffs. Offensively, A.J. Brown left the game earlier, but is not to believe serious in Week 18 to prevent him from playing in this wild card round. Unfortunately, it looks like Sidney Brown had a bad knee injury that will end his season, so that's going to hurt them. The Eagles are also hurting with Blankenship and Slay and questionable in the secondary as well. That could certainly affect them. Offensively, Hurts, Swift, Brown, and Devontae Smith all carry questionable status. The Bucs, like the Packers, have gotten healthier as the season progresses, and they're really on the verge, in my mind, of moving on to the division round. To me, Jeff, this is the toughest game to handicap. I like the Bucs here, but feel like the Eagles are going to get it done on the road, and I would lean to the under. Jeff, can Baker get a playoff win in the NFC?
So I think he can. I do think Philadelphia is one of the biggest collapses I've seen in the last several years in the NFL, and that's got to be weighing on them coming into the playoffs. I just think they're kind of a mess emotionally and psychologically, and physically. Hurts has not thrown the ball yet this week after dislocating the finger last week. Like I said, Brown, Devonta Smith, they're both a little banged up, plus their secondary. And they have just not been cohesive and not have much practice time this week to get better. I see it being really dysfunctional. It's probably the least excited I am to see a game this weekend. I don't think it's going to be good football. And I think Tampa Bay probably can squeak this one out.
All right. So I think the division round would look great with the Flacco Ravens matchup, a Chiefs Bills rematch, maybe a 49ers revenge game against the Eagles, and the Dallas Lions, or quite frankly, maybe a Rams 49ers would look good for the NFL. So I'm going to be betting that way this week because I'm looking to the division round, and I'm going to be betting the teams that I think are going to look good for a division round for the NFL this week in the wild card round. Jeff, I'm going to give you the last word, and then we can. We probably need to go back over our picks real quick. You want to do that?
You bet.
Yeah. Okay. So that first game, the first Saturday game, we have the. Let me get back here. We got the Browns and the Texans. Who are you taking straight up, and who are you taking on the line?
I'm taking Cleveland straight up and to cover the points.
Okay, me too. Next up, we have the Chiefs hosting the Dolphins.
So I've definitely got Kansas City winning this game. I think it's going to be fairly close because of the weather. So, it's kind of iffy for me on whether they cover.
Yeah, I'm going with the Chiefs straight up and against the spread here. Then we finish up with the Bills and the Steelers.
Buffalo for sure wins. I think they cover as well and go over.
Yeah, I like the Bills to win, and I like the over a lot better. I'm not sure about the points. I'm staying away from that one. Next up, Sunday we got the Dallas and the Packers.
I think Dallas wins this, covers the points, and goes over.
All right, Jeff, I'm going with you on that one. And then we have the Goff Stafford or Lions Rams rematch.
Very tough one for me. I'm going to say Detroit takes it, but it's really close.
Okay, I like the over here, and I like the Lions to win it. If it's 3, I'd go with the Lions. If it's 3.5, I'd probably go with the Rams. And then we'll finish up with the Eagles and the Bucks.
An ugly game. I think Tampa Bay wins this one, and points, it's just kind of a toss-up for me right now. So I think Tampa should take this, and that'll get the point spread.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Tampa on the point spread, but I'm going to take the Eagles to get a close win, and I'd go under. All right, Jeff, I'll give you the last word.
Well, I always, in this round, like to see how teams are performing going in. That's why I don't like Philadelphia, because they were falling apart the last few weeks of the season. And that's why I'm intrigued by the Rams, because they certainly played well, only losing to Baltimore in the last 6 weeks of the season. And we know what we think about Baltimore. So those two teams are on opposite spectrums. I like the Rams' momentum, and I do not like the Eagles falling apart.
All right, well, rookies, good luck this week. Don't bet it all in the wild card round. Leave some for the divisional round. That's where the money is often made in the season. I'll give you any last word, Jeff?
No, next week is when I'm looking forward to some bigger bets.
Yep. All right. You'll have a good one. Good luck. And we'll see you next week, the division round. Thank you.